we're not all going to be Jamie Olivers and Gordon Ramsays, and we're not going to get to the top of the tree. One skill in being a chef is actually understanding your customer. And that comes back to knowing your limits. But yes, so going back, hard work. It's probably 5% luck, 10% talent, and then the rest of it is just, you have to do it. You have to put the hours in and you have to do the work. If I write a recipe, I haven't invented that. So who has the copyright on a recipe? Or, if you look on the web and somebody will say, well, this is my crumble recipe. It's not really, because it's a, it's a generic recipe. So I think there's very, very few, there's dishes that chefs do and they do this and this and this and this, but recipe writing is a bit kind of like, because no, it's out there. And so what you taste and I taste is, we can be tasting the same thing, but how we taste it is completely different. So somebody using a language is, you've got to connect with that.
Today's episode was brought to you with the support of our friends at Kyoto Restobar. From the izakaya dishes to the most delicious sushi in Jersey, Kyoto Restobar is the place you should have in mind for your next on-island Japanese experience. Whether you choose to dine in or order online, I promise that you won't be disappointed. And now, back to the episode.
Christian Go, aka an island chef. Welcome to Hospitality Insights.
Oh, thank you very much.
Great to have you.
It's great to finally be here. We've been trying to do this for a long time, haven't we?
I know. But you were busy, we're going to get to it, what you've been busy with. Now, we're going to begin like we always do on this channel. We want to give a bit of, on this podcast, we want to give a bit of context of your life, like how you go into hospitality, because this is the main subject. So how was the beginning?
So I've always been fascinated by food. I've loved it. And I was very lucky to grow up in the countryside. So, people used to drop off pheasants and partridges and ants and my mum and my grandma, they would, I can remember looking over the table and seeing these things being prepared. And I think it just started from there. I've always been fascinated, and I'm very lucky that I've got 3 amazing sort of cooks in my family, an aunt, my mom, and Nanny, and they were all incredible in different ways. They were all doing it. I mean, my Nanny, she used to do icing of cakes, very formal, when you see those wedding cakes that are stacked. So she used to do that.
Attention to details and all that.
Attention to detail. My aunt, she could cook anything, but would use an entire kitchen to do it. She was just one of those, like, oh my God.
Like a wedding just happened.
Yeah. How many pans have you used to make that? We, like a lot of people, it revolved. I grew up in the countryside. It revolved around food. So we've just come out of Christmas. Christmas was always a big...
Was it in the UK, I guess?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was literally, and one of the reasons I'm an island chef is I grew up about as close in the UK as it's possible to be from the sea. So I think the stats are you're never more than about 60 miles anywhere in the UK from the sea. That's where I was, right in the middle. So, when we used to go to the seaside, it was a 2... I'm used to people talking now, and they travel hundreds of miles, but it used to be a sort of 60, 70 mile journey just to get, and then it's over there somewhere and the sea would be out and it would just be like, so all of a sudden then, I've just gone the complete opposite and now lived on island number 5, but we will come to that later. So food's always been there. It's been huge. And so I did some studying, I did A-levels, but I always wanted to get into it, and I did. I went to college and I learned to be a chef.
Did you go like straight into cooking? Was that your? Because some people they don't really know what they want at a younger age. Was that your pursuit right at the beginning? Was like, what, this is what I like. I like what my mom does. I know they inspired you to go that route.
I think it was. I think there was a little bit of. Dare I say I've been talking to somebody today about it. There's always a little bit of pressure when you chefing wasn't always seen to be the thing to do.
Even now it's not.
Yeah. And I remember my stepdad, he took my CV into the college because I'd applied to do catering, and they thought he was joking. They thought he was having a bit of a laugh. They were like, but he's got A-levels and he's quite, and he said, no, that's what he wants to do. So, give him chance to
to do what you want.
And it was, and it, you know, and that's wrong. I mean, it shouldn't have been, but it was always seen to be a little bit of a, why do you want to do? Why do you? I'd say it's the best thing you can ever do, but I know we'll get to that as well, because you know you can always find employment if you can cook.
Oh no, absolutely. You can travel with this job like very well, like so many chefs I know.
Yeah.
I mean, you are the perfect example. 6 islands or 5 or whatever.
Yeah, 6. You know, 6 islands working, 5 living. Yeah, of course. And you know, you can. You know, if anybody says to me now, why do you want to cook? Well, you can backpack around the world. You can go off to Australia, and if you can pour a beer, make a cocktail, and you can cook a burger, then you know you're guaranteed that you can get a job somewhere.
It's a life skill as well. It's almost like we need to eat, right? I mean, it's on the day-to-day helps. Not even talking about getting professional, you know, getting to a level that you are professional, even if you know it for yourself. And as Simon Sowell was saying, you know, it almost should be like a national service, because even if you do it for a short period of time, it teaches you so many things. Hospitality in general.
Well, I mean, Simon's actually, and we can, you know, Simon's a director of the company that I work for now, and he's really passionate, and I totally agree with him. And it is a life set, and it's a skill. And one of the things I'm lucky enough to do now, I said I'm a little bit older and a little bit more experienced, is give some of that inspiration back. And I'm glad I've still got that inspiration. But you know, there are people, and on the island there are people, they haven't got those life skills, and it's very important that, and we, you know, we can do all about how expensive food is and whatever, but you know, it's important. Just people don't even know the sort of right end of a knife or what to do, and
let's focus on things that we can change, right, in a way, because it's no point crying. Well, to a degree, it's no point crying about taxes. They're still there. Let's try to see what we can do with what we've got, or with the ingredients we've got.
There is, you know, there's a point, and there's a thing to say that you know, we should attempt to look at cost of living and why does it cost so much, but equally we live on an island in the middle of the sea, so there is always going to be an additional cost to what you eat compared to wherever else you go, because there's it's imported and there's freight costs. But yeah, just don't get me wrong. Everybody likes it. We all like a meal from the supermarket. We all like a takeaway. But you know, an onion, a stick of celery, some tomatoes, and a few other ingredients, and you can make some soup. Yeah. And you buy some soup, it's expensive. So that just those skills. And again, going back to where you started the conversation, food's a great leveler. And you know, I'm used to, like I say, the big family gatherings, the 14,
brings
15
people together.
And you're there, and people are cooking, and people are tasting stuff, and then it gets passed around the table, and it's just that big social sort of glue that sticks families together and friends together. I mean, you get it in restaurants, and it's great, but it's also good to do it yourself.
No, absolutely. But you mentioned about passing your knowledge on to maybe younger generation, to other people that need this skill. Are there people that want to get that information from you? Because do you feel like it's challenging, you know, finding those people that actually want to learn from you?
I've been in a meeting today, and we're looking at locating in a site in town. We're going to actually do some cooking lessons for people who've been in care, people who haven't perhaps had the opportunities, people who haven't gained the life skills. And we've got the first cohort of people coming through at the end of the month. So there are people out there.
That's amazing.
And you know, they need and they want those skills. And it's great to be in a position to do it. We reckon, we were talking today, you know, there's probably about 200 people who are in the sort of 16 to 25-year-old age gap that haven't had that have been through care, been through the system, and need to have some of those skills that up to now there isn't. So yeah, there are people out there, and I think there's lots of people, you know, for different reasons. You might have difficulties, you might not fit in with the school system. You know, there's ways of teaching people that is slightly different to what's accepted of you must go to school, you must do this, you must do this. Whereas we're looking at options with some of the schools to to just bring them in, to give them some
It's a
training.
more relaxed way of
More
doing
relaxed
it.
way, but you can be clever about it. So I've got my post-16 teaching qualification. So there's interesting ways. You were a chef, so you'll know if you're looking at a recipe, you've got amounts of products that involve. So there's some maths involved. Are we going to scale that recipe up? Are we going to scale that recipe down? So there's maths involved there. One of the things on the course that we're looking to be doing at the moment is we're going to take people around the shops. We're going to say, well, look, what's the better value? You've got this at this price, you've got this at this price, but it's using other skills as well. That's not just about, this is an onion, this is what it does, it goes in these dishes. We're going to teach other skills as well. So, and I like showing off a bit. So there's lots of weird things.
Like any chef.
Like any chef. Yeah, but you can bring science into it, turmeric. You know turmeric?
Yeah.
So turmeric is bright yellow. And when you use it to colour and flavour curries. But if you put it in an alkaline solution and heat it, it goes dark red.
I didn't know that.
No, neither did I, until a couple of years ago. And somebody was using it to colour fish batter. So they were putting a teaspoon into a big bucket with some beer and some soda water and flour. And I can't quite remember why, but they must have changed the acidity of it. So they put some baking powder in. And when they were putting the fish in, it was coming out looking like it was burnt. So I did some research. And the reason was because the turmeric was turning red and it made the batter look, it wasn't burnt, it was still perfectly edible, but it didn't look appetizing. And it was just like, why has this happened? And see, I surprised you, but so you do something like, you can put some turmeric in a pan, you put some bicarbonate of soda in there, you heat it up, and everybody goes, oh, wow, that's a bit clever. Yeah, it's just simple, but there's science, there's maths, there's a whole lot more to it than just, cooking.
No, absolutely, yeah. And making it interesting, I guess, you can even target a younger audience, because I think those are the ones that are a bit more like, oh, this is boring, give me something else. But I feel like, doing these kind of almost experiments, that it catches the eye and it'll be like, you know what, I want to kind of like see what's today. And it's coming again and again and again. And it probably just by playing, he already understands how to make a few recipes to cook something at home.
Well, I don't want to get too preachy because I'm conscious that you can get over Karen cooks. I'm not involved in the side that, but we've got 3 or 4 lovely people who go around the primary schools and they teach. So my youngest daughter, who's at primary school yesterday, she brought back some Mediterranean scones with black olives, sun-dried tomatoes and cheese on the top. So we're actually teaching down at sort of like the 7-8-year-old level, trying to bring people on and give them those skills as well. I have to say they were really tasty. She hated them. She hates, but they've got these black bits in, Dad. I don't like them, but it's important. And you're right. But if you can make it and do it in a fun way, again, even we involve ourselves in the curriculum so that they're teaching, again, maths and how many of these, or if you have a tomato and you cut it into 4, it's dividing it. So there's lots of great
but
things.
But then by dividing it, you also learn how to cut it. And, it's kind of like helping with math and with cooking, right? Yeah. But then do you think that this is the way? Because, I have questions. Probably one of the questions is always, how do we bring people back into hospitality? I'm talking like the staff shortage situation. Do you feel like this is one of the way that we could kind of solve this problem, presenting it, to children at a younger age, for them to almost get, inspired and, be like, what, cooking is actually quite cool.
Yeah, definitely. I obviously I have my 2 daughters. They cook with me, and I don't, they're forced to cook with me. They're not forced to cook with me, but they have a thing, and they've progressed from like, okay, we're going to make something, to now they chase me. Now, I know we'll talk about social media and bits and pieces. So one of the things that I do is we do every year, we do Halloween baking, and we've got a bit of a following, and we've been on Google and bits and pieces. But it's kind of got now that my eldest daughter starts scrolling sort of from the 1st of June through And then she goes, look, we can do this, and we can do skulls with axes. And I'm like, oh, look, just we'll calm it down a little bit, but we'll do it. So every year I have to come up with 2 or 3 different inventive Halloween bakes. But again, it's that firing that enthusiasm and how do you do it? And so one of the things Karen Cook's doing, one of the things I'm passionate about is we're getting the primary school children there. We're looking at how we can do that with secondary school children. What we need to do is we need to feed those children and exactly what you said, get them inspired, get them wanting to do it. So they knock on the doors of Highlands College and they go, actually, we want to do a catering course. We want to do this. And then, I know there's plenty of people on the island and plenty of great chefs who run kitchens and front of house as well, who would welcome that influx. And they do it. They help us out. We do another thing at Karen Cook's where we did, before Christmas, they went in and made afternoon tea in some of the Savoy and some of the other hotels on the island, So a class went in from different schools and they met the chefs and they made afternoon tea and then their parents came and sat and eat it. What an incredible way of getting, kids interested in cooking, getting them involved, but also showing them, this is what a kitchen looks like. And this is a lot of kids don't know even the home kitchen, let alone what a professional kitchen. So it's just firing. I know you've got the passion. It's firing that passion up and just getting people interested.
No, absolutely. And, I feel like probably this is, now that I think about it, this is probably one of the solutions because, okay, Highlands is doing its part, but, they already take people, that are already like, be more mature. So I feel like by then they should already be almost like pointed towards cooking or towards hospitality by something like what you guys do, which is amazing, and have the option. But do you feel that parents are on board with it in terms of like supporting them, not just for, probably it's early to ask, it's early to kind of like know as well. But then do they do it just like, do cooking a bit for fun, but you know what? I wouldn't really want my child, to do it for a living because we know how complicated it is. We love it. It's great. It's amazing. Probably for the same reason, we both try to do something else, which is still kind of in relation to cooking, and you still do it. You still work really hard, and you're still in hospitality to a degree because you still with the schools. What people don't know, what you just mentioned earlier before starting the podcast, you do some high numbers in terms of like covers, which some people probably think, oh yeah, he got out of it. He's not working for a pub or for a restaurant, for a number of restaurants managing them, but you still do it at a really high level. But do you think that the parents are on board with this for a long run?
No, and that is a very good question. And no, I think probably not, and that's a shame. And there is still a social stigma. There are countries, I think France, Italy, where if you work in hospitality, if you're the maitre d' in a restaurant or you're a head chef, it's accepted, it's valued, it's seen as a really big career to do, and if you're seen as a head chef, whereas over here, it is not over here. I'm talking more about England or the British.
Romania is the same, for example. I know quite a few countries. It's still perceived as being a secondary option. And that's, it's wrong because if you can get to the top level. But I mean, you said about what, as a parent, I would encourage my daughters to do whatever they want. I was going to ask, what would be your option?
Yeah, so no, I would never stop them, and I would never say. And I did the 90 hours. I did the whole thing. I did 90 hours for a very long time a week, and probably more sometimes. And we're not all going to be Jamie Olivers and Gordon Ramsays, and we're not going to get to the top of the tree. It's an incredibly fulfilling lifestyle. It's an incredibly opportunistic lifestyle, like we've already mentioned about traveling. And you can do very well out of it, especially sort of over here as well. You've got that culture now where a lot of people are opening their own restaurants. So if you're of an entrepreneurial sort of mindset, you open your own restaurant. So I would never stop my daughters doing it. What I want to do, and what I'm trying in my own very small ways to encourage, when you say about parents, is to say, look, don't view this negatively. It's a great career. It's a great opportunity. Yes, I'm slightly out of the sort of the original business that I was in, which was pubs and restaurants and hotels. But then again, it's another opportunity, and it's great. I've started to write about food and drink now, and that's brilliant. I'm a member of the Guild of Food Writers, which is the likes of Rick Stein and Delia Smith. So when we have a big Christmas do, that's a shindig and a half. You're talking serious chefing and food knowledge there. You've got to be on your top game, because these are the guys at the top of the profession. It's the top 500 food professionals in the country in terms of communication. So yeah, but it opens that it doesn't have to just be I'm in the kitchen cooking. There's a whole world of opportunity.
Well, this is something that we talked about previously, and I think it was with Simon again. He was like, when we mentioned, don't do it even if you don't do it for a long time, I'm talking like waiter, chef and stuff. Try to work around maybe hospitality, like you currently do with you move from, as you said, from the 90 hours to something a bit more manageable, whether with the age, whether with the family, things change in life, right? You need to adapt and make them all kind of like work together. So I feel like that's, again, something that people should understand. There is a lot more. I mean, look, to a degree, I know it's not my full-time job, but I miss hospitality. So I left for a few years. I'm like, I really miss, like I don't really see that I'm actually doing something. I don't do something with my hands, and it was really hard because with IT, because that's what I left it for at the beginning. Now I'm with marketing and stuff like that, and videography and everything else. But I feel like nothing really came of my hands. It felt like I'm not useful in a way.
Yeah.
So that's when I started the cooking channel, and it was just for fun at the beginning. And I'm like, what, we'll do a few recipes, and then a few recipes turn up being like 200. Nothing crazy. I never really thought that I invented anything. It was just more of a like, open the fridge, see what's in there, cook. Maybe somebody likes it, maybe I help someone with it. And then that was my way of keeping, connected. And with this podcast, with you and with other chefs and with restaurant managers and hotels and stuff like that, because hospitality is a lot bigger. So I feel like that's the answer, Don't feel like it's just chefs. Don't feel like it's just waiters. Don't feel like it's just this and that. It's a lot more to it. It's crazy.
It's difficult to explain. We don't have that many chains over here. So we don't have in the UK, and I'm sure in different countries, if some places they're in hospitality, but they're more like retail units. Now again, I don't want to name names, and they're very good at what they do, but they're very precise. Everything is made or served to a certain standard. It's a spec. It's mass produced. It's like the Ford Motor Car Company, but they're doing it with food. And you can still be very passionate about that. But from what you've said, and I hope that I'm the same, is you've got that passion. I mean, my family, when I finally said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get evenings off and I'm going to be able to work weekends, they were like, great. And it's wonderful. And I've just had a really nice Christmas with them, but I know exactly what you mean. And if you do hospitality and it takes over your life, but it's such a big part of your life, you're like, I need to. And to me, the blogging and the bits and pieces, they help fill that. And that's like I said to you, it's that initial passion. I've been very lucky that I've been able to do the job that I like for such a very long time. If I ever got to the stage where I didn't go home and didn't want to cook dinner, then I always said it was the time to leave. But obviously, as you get older, it's difficult then because what am I going to retrain? What am I going to do? I'm not like you. I'm not a technological wizard. Like I say, I'm starting to write writings. If anybody said to you, do you want to do it? It's quite awkward and difficult to get in.
How did you get into that? Because that's interesting. Not many chefs are doing that part,
You have to be so persistent. So There's a thing like, I don't know if you've ever heard about it. When you're an actor, you have to get a green card or an equity card before you can act. So you can't act and go in a movie until you've got a card, but they won't give you a card until you've been in a movie or act. And it's a bit like that with writing. So you say, I'd love to really write for you. And they go, well, can you show us some articles that you've written before? And you go, well, no, because I'm going to write for you. And they go, oh, well, if you haven't got anything. So you just have to keep knocking on doors. And I will say one thing, there's a lovely lady over here called Sophie, and she prints a magazine called Manna. It's a lifestyle magazine. And I said, can I write a few recipes for you? And she said, yeah. So I did that for about two and a half years. So then I kind of got this little body of work, and then I did a couple of bits for the Jersey Evening Post. And so literally you build up, it's a bit like you doing your recipes, you know, or you have a repertoire of dishes that you cook. You build up a small body of work, and then you can actually turn around and you can go to somebody and they go, oh, well, what have you done before? Well, there you go.
You've got a portfolio.
You've got a portfolio, exactly, you know. So then I started, so it then went, and it got down to lockdown. And obviously everybody did different things in lockdown, and I decided to push it a bit further. So I did quite a lot of courses and training. So I did my YSET, which is all about wine, level 1 and 2. I used to work for the Liberation Group, so I worked for a brewery. So, you know, I can probably hoof it.
That gave you a different perspective.
I can hoof it a little bit and talk about beer. And so now I'm the chef in residence for Camera, which is the campaign for Real Ale. So I write their monthly, so beer-related recipes. So I have to come up with a recipe every month that has beer involved in it. So I've been doing some research over the last couple of weeks. And we do a podcast as well. Camera does a podcast. So we're talking about malt, which is one of the key ingredients of beer. We're going to do... I don't know if you've ever been to America where they do so they do floats. They do like a soda or a beer, and then you stick ice cream in the top. Now it's a really weird combination.
They do all sorts of weird stuff.
It's going. But it's in the movies when you watch them and they've got the soda fountains and they're all in. So that's what they do, and then you stick ice cream in the top. They're root beer floats, but you can do it with beer. So we're going to do some beer floats. And everybody gave me the same look that you've just given me. You're off. You've lost it, Christian.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell because
how do I? So, okay, getting really technical a little bit. You have a continental wheat beers, you know, and they're quite citrusy. They're the cloudy beers. But Hoegaarden's probably the biggest name that everybody knows. But wheat beers are very popular on the continent. But they normally have lots of orange peel flavors, lemon. So you just have a glass of that, but then you stick a scoop of orange sorbet in it. And you just think, no, that doesn't, but it does. And it works.
But there's so many things, even in cooking, that you think like, this wouldn't work. But then when you taste it, so that's why for me, it's hard to say completely not, because it might
it's
actually
just
work.
Really, you know, on a hot summer's day, instead of having some ice, you've got an ice cold beer with some orange sorbet in the top. And it's just like, that won't work. But
the people drink already, you know, these recorded links and stuff, you know. So exactly. I'm not saying it's going to be the same, but that's flavored with.
Yeah. So it kind of started like that, and now it's gone a little bit further. So like I say, I do a beer podcast with the guys at Camera. I'm right for them, and then you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And there is a journalistic thing. You build your portfolio, and there's a couple of websites, and you put your details on there, and then people contact you and say, well, you know, I've got this business. We're going to make this product. Could you write us some copy for that or whatever? So there's lots of opportunities, but you have to be persistent in the start. It's a real kind of.
Do you think that this is, because what I want to kind of get out of you with this, you know, with the writing is, do you think this is talent or is hard work? Because, for example, I'm just talking my situation. I feel like for me, it's a lot more hard work than talent, because being self-aware, I don't think I can recognize people where I like, man, this is completely like so talented. I'm talking like podcast, video. I'm talking from in my area, or videography. What I do, I feel like for me is a lot more like hard work, like almost like try and fail, and then, as you said, being persistent. And you know, I have, for example, I don't know, like 200 something recipes. Out of 200, probably only let's say 30 of them kind of do well on YouTube, that they keep getting views. So for me, it's not like, I feel like hard work for me, it's what kind of like keeps me, you know, not talent. How do you find it in your situation?
I can't remember who, there was a famous quote, isn't there? And they said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I can't remember who did it, but they basically explained that. No, I think you're right. You do need a little bit of luck, and you need to be in the right place or occasionally know the right person. I'm by far, I am not the best chef. Yeah, my daughters go, Daddy, you're the best chef in the world. And I go, yeah. I'm not the best chef by any stretch of the imagination. And I know my limitations, and I've worked at top level. I wasn't comfortable with it. I know you've had guests on, you know, and the tweezers come out, and no, it's not me.
I did a bit of Michelin myself, like working as a chef.
I've been done it. I am where I used to be. Liberation. You know, I would class myself as a good pub chef. One skill in being a chef is actually understanding your customer, and that comes back to knowing your limits. But yes, so going back, hard work. It's probably 5% luck, 10% talent, and then the rest of it is just, you have to do it. You have to put the hours in, and you have to do the work. So, you know, I know you have the knowledge and skill set, but it's the persistence, and it's a try. You said about recipes. So Island Chef has lots of recipes on. There's charitable stuff I do there. There's all the bakes that I do with my kids. I haven't got my niche quite sorted yet. And, you know, you said you do marketing, and everybody goes, you need a niche. You need a niche, and you have to do this. And going forward, you know, I've got a lot more people now I know on the island and contacts, and we can talk about this in a minute. I want to do the suppliers, and there's so many great people on the island and doing wonderful things. But I like Chinese food.
I know, I was going to say, because on your channel, you specifically say that.
I like Chinese food. So every year, we're just coming up to it now, I always do like recipes for Chinese New Year. Now, on an Island Chef, there's, like I've said, there's Halloween baking. There's seafood, because I live on an island and we need to do seafood. So, you know, there's lobsters dishes, there's mussel dishes, there's lots of different recipes, there's seasonal recipes. You said about how many of your recipes get followed. My number one recipe for a man who lives on an island near France is Peking style Chinese roast duck. And I open, and I don't do it very often, because you shouldn't, and you get a bit like, you know, you look, how many people have followed me today when you first start? You just have to stop doing it. But occasionally I look at the stats and I go, what? And it is just literally month after month, by far, and I mean by far, the little graph goes, and it's like that.
I remember seeing the pictures. I was on the website. I was there, you know, seeing it, and it looks amazing. Even the picture looks really good.
It's so bizarre that it's just like, and you know, there's hundreds of people in Canada, America, and every day, and I get, you know, comments back, and could you explain to me, because there's golden syrup in the recipe. We don't. What's golden syrup? So I get emails, you know, and I have to answer back. Well, it's an inverted. You've probably got a sugar syrup or cornstarch that you can use, but and seriously, it's just the most. So, you know, that's where I'm saying it comes down to luck. You've got to put the work in, and you've got to have the knowledge, but you've got to put the work in. But you also just need that little bit. And why do people ask me about Chinese roast duck? You know, there's. It's just. I've
got a few recipes, but you know, sometimes you have a feeling was like, this is gonna absolutely kill it, and it never does. I mean, not never. Most situation it doesn't. For I don't know. At least in my situation, I'm like, you know, you feel like it's got the right thumbnail, it's got the right title, I say the right things. You know, be like, I felt like I'm in the mood, you know, for that kind of dish, and in my mind was like, oh, people should kind of see it. You just post it. 100 views max, 200, 300 max, and it down. And nobody ever sees it probably again. And then other videos, you just find like, okay, I need to do a video. Oh my God, I didn't do my shopping. Let's see what's in the fridge. Open the fridge. Like, I don't know, like a few months back, like chicken wings. Okay, chicken wings. Let's do air fryer here. Let's do some air fried chicken wings. Boom. And I think that gets like, I can't remember now. I don't want to talk nonsense, but it gets a few thousand views a day. And I'm like, how? You know, it wasn't even, I didn't even try. much. You know, it was just one of those days when I didn't even plan it. So it's a really interesting internet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and this is for another discussion that we could have. You could do a completely different podcast. You know, there's trends and there's chefing bits and what's so air fryers and what's in, and that's why I'm saying with an island chef, it is very, very much me, and it's not done to follow. You know, we should do this or we should do this or we should do this. It is literally a bit like yourself. Do you know what? I'm going to make that today.
Yeah. And you know, so many situations I'm like, I don't even care what's trending. I'm like, these are the ingredients I've got. You know, whether this does well or not, I'm still going to do the next one. I'm still going to do the following one. I'm still going to continue doing. And out of 10, there'll be one that does well. And if it doesn't, I still love doing it. I still eat something something that I like.
And, you know, and you're saying about the applying yourself and the hard work again, you know, it can be, you know, you sit there sometimes and the kids go to bed and your partner, she's watching telly or whatever, or you've got your headphones on and what are you doing? I'm writing a recipe. And it's quite intense, you know, it's quite without getting into the whole setting it out and how you have to do, and you said, you know, like taglines and bits and SEO and all those other great things that you kind of have to do on to get yourself noticed. But it's a whole different skill set, and I'm learning. I mean, for instance, when I do the recipes for camera about the beer, I normally got about a 600 to 650 word limit. And you think, well, that's easy. But it isn't. If you do a recipe and a method and you're telling people...
To be very detailed, yeah?
To be very detailed, and bearing in mind that I could probably explain something to you and you'd understand it because you've got that chefing background, but you're not. So, you go back and look at the recipe and you go, no, I can't say that. I can't just say that. I've got to explain it in more detail. And then when you want to put in some details about the dish and maybe why the beer you've chosen goes into that recipe and the flavors, and you try and put a little bit of history in there or a catch or whatever, all of a sudden then you're going back and you're like knocking words, or can I make that sentence a bit shorter, or can I take that? So it's a completely different skill set, but no, it's great. It's interesting.
You mentioned about Chinese food. I'm not big into Chinese food, but let me tell you something. I go every now and then because I work for a big company here in Jersey, and I'm part of the marketing and design team, and I'm in charge with the videography on the videography side, and we've got an office in Guernsey. So China Red.
I know what you're going to say. I know where you're going to say. So I was talking to somebody today. I
want your opinion on that.
I was talking to Tommy. You know, Tommy.
Radigan.
Yeah. So I was talking to Tommy, and he said, you know, what do you really miss? And I said, it's Chinese. And he said, oh no, you're in luck. There's 2 Chinese opening on the island. I was like, really? I haven't heard. And he said, yeah, no, there's one opening here and one here. And I went, China Red. And everybody I know sort of goes. And funnily enough, I used to work with another guy over here called Steve who runs Number 10, and he knows the guy who runs China Red. And he when we went over there, said, we're going to go to China Red. And he went, that's so-and-so. He said, you don't want to go there? I used to work with him. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He said, no, he wouldn't know what to do with China. But it's about the 4th best Chinese restaurant in the country. I'm talking the UK.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Yeah. No, it's up there.
I thought that it was absolutely mind-blowing.
It's up there in the top, definitely in the top 5. I mean, it is just, sorry, thanks, big China Red. We'll get an invite now. Next time.
We're not even sponsored, but you know what? They deserve it. They deserve it.
It is a really good.
They really deserve it. I'm a bit more towards Indian. I like my Indian. I absolutely love it. I feel like, there are a lot more like flavors that kind of confuse me. I love that. I just want to be kind of like sent into a world that I don't understand almost.
I want to say there are other restaurants available. I feel we need to do that one and other cuisines. And if anybody else wants to invite us, we'll quite happily go. But it is. I like Indian. I don't know what it is. I just got, funnily enough, again, we're going back to Christmas. It's just been Christmas. And when I was in London, I worked in a big hotel, and it was a big function hotel. So we could do 2,000 people at a time. And sort of for the whole of for the whole of November and December, about my 3rd year in, I literally just cooked turkey. All I did. I went into work, I cooked turkey. I sliced, and these are the days where you did, so you do a slice of the breast meat, the white meat, and then you boned and rolled the legs. So you have a slice of the dark meat, and then you made some stuffing, and then you had the little chipolata and bacon roll on the top. And then you'd put these onto trays, and they'd be heated, and they'd be taken down to the function room. So 2,000. How many portions have we got today, chef? You need to do 1,500 for tomorrow. Thank you.
It was almost like automation.
Yeah, so it was. And it got to Christmas Day, and I literally went to Chinatown on Christmas Day, and I had Chinese for Christmas dinner. That was because I
had enough of turkey.
I loathe turkey with a passion. Even now.
You're not the only one. I know most of the chefs.
Most of the chefs, because you just get out. And it started. So I was very lucky that I lived near Chinatown. And when you live near Chinatown in London, it's a completely different experience, because it's just, you can, and you go and you eat where Chinese people eat, and they have the spoons, and they kind of sit very close to the bowl, and they eat really, really quickly, and really, really like, I'm enjoying this food because it's delicious. And then, you're there for about 10 minutes and you're doing the same thing. Dim sum restaurants, absolutely brilliant. And then a few years later, when I'd left, I was very lucky to go back, and I was taken out to Hakkasan, which is the Michelin starred Chinese restaurant. And we blew an extortionate amount of money on a Chinese meal, and it was just out of this world. They did steamed scallops, and to this day I can't work out how they managed to do a scallop in a wrapper and it not be chewy. It was just that. It's those. That's really interesting, and that's something maybe just to touch on when you're cooking. Restaurants that I really like, or chefs that I really like, is just, how did they do that? Like I say, I said earlier, I'm not the best chef, but I've got enough grounding and enough understanding that I think I can hold my own with it a great amount.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, if you can't understand how somebody does something, it's just like, I need to know how they made that. And that's still one of the dishes. I don't know what you do. It's and again, I suppose it's different cultures. It's like pate.
Yeah.
If I see pate on a menu, I'll always have a pate, because I want to know, has that restaurant made the pate or the terrine? Is it?
And it's easy to tell as soon as you see it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Have they made it? And then you can see the level of skill in that restaurant. I'd probably even go to the extent of having 2 starters. I'll have 1 starter, but
to test it.
Yeah, we'll just have a pate just to see, or a terrine or whatever. And it's such a simple, it's, if you do a chicken liver pate, it's chicken livers, brandy, garlic, thyme, loads of butter, little splash of cream, salt and pepper, and it's done. That's all you need to do. But to get it right, and then you should really blitz it. You should pat it so that it's smooth, and then put the butter on the top. But it's that balance of flavoring, and I think that's what sorts the real sort of chefs out. Seasoning. And again, going back with Tommy and I had a good chat today. So we were talking, it's that people seasoning things. When you're taking chefs on, do they taste it? Do they, when they're making something, do you see them trying it? Are they tasting it? Are they seasoning it? Even simple cuts of meat, And again, I'm sure from your background, when I've had people, I can also remember I used to run a restaurant, and somebody stopping me once and saying, your chicken, where do you get your chicken breasts from? She said, they're the most amazingly tasty chicken breasts.
Because you season it right.
Yeah. And it was like, they weren't any particular, they weren't corn-fed, they weren't French, they were good, but it was just seasoned generous. When my mum watches this, my mum still now, if I go home and cook for my mum, she's the only person that I know, and I go, Mum, I used to run a 3 AA Rosette restaurant. I'm pretty sure I can season things. And before she even tastes the food that I've put in front of her, she'll get the salt pot and she'll go.
I know a few.
It's an old kind of. I think it's
or
sort
same
of different.
Some people with pepper. I'm like, why you not even tried it? I might have added a ton of it in there.
It's a different generation, but yeah. So it's there are those basics. It's understanding the simple things. You can't go wrong by adding too much butter to anything. Butter helps.
Yeah,
butter helps.
It helps at least with flavor. It might not be
healthy, but
but the flavor, oh my
yeah.
God,
You know.
yeah. No, absolutely, I agree. It makes so much difference. And but one of the biggest mistakes people make are not adding enough. And I think in general, I'm talking, whether it's bay leaves, whether it's enough butter, whether it's enough oil, I think it's being afraid of like, oh, it's just a pinch, I'm not touching it again. But I think, that's what separates, in most situations, chefs from someone doing it at home.
I also remember, not long after I came onto the island and Liberation asked me to do, we used to have a food festival. I don't know if you can remember it, in the square, and they did in demonstration kitchens.
Yes,
And I can't remember who'd been on before, but they'd been on before, and they were doing it, and they'd got the sous vide, and they were putting it in the water baths and doing everything. And then I went on afterwards. I think it probably helped that everybody in the audience got a free half pint. So I'm not saying it was basically my cooking. Probably the fact that I gave everybody, or was able to give.
But you went classic.
Yeah, I went. But I can't remember. I know I did. So I did, again, it was beer related. So I did like a carbonade de boeuf, and I did something else, and I did something else. But I was going through it, and I was like, right, so you need a decent glug of oil in this one, and you need a big knob of butter, and somebody stopped me afterwards, and he said, I really liked what you did. I said, oh, that's really nice. He said, no, because he said, I understood it. He said, I know what a glug of oil is. And it's a bit like you say, it's that not being afraid, but it is, when pinch and you see people do that, well, you may as well not bother. That's not doing anything. If you're going to do it, you've got to be bold, and you've got to put those things in. One of the wisest bits of information I ever had about cooking, and especially menus, is if you say something on a menu, it should do what it says on the menu. So if you say something is spicy, it needs to be spicy, not sort of like, I thought there was a hint of it there, or, we've done it because grandma doesn't really like spice. If you say it's got chili in it, it needs to taste of chili. If you say it's cumin roasted carrots, they need to taste of cumin. And all too often, a lot of, even just basic, if it says it should do what it says on the tin.
No fake news.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now you have an amazing, career, working in all sorts of places, 6 different islands, settled in Jersey. What do you think changed from when you started in cooking or in hospitality to now? How do you see the years, that passed over this industry? What was changed, whether in good or bad?
I think we've touched on it briefly. So, you did lots of hours. Hospitality is understanding now. Wages are better. Conditions are getting better. It's intensive. It's creative, and anything that's creative is draining. You're giving yourself to doing something, and if you're doing that, at the end of the day, it's tiring. Not just the physicality of, especially if I've done front of house as well. So, but from my perspective as a chef, if you're standing in front of a hot range and, you're getting orders thrown at you, it's physically tiring, but it's also, you're giving emotionally when you're creating things. So conditions are getting better. We've touched on that. Is it still looked at as something that you should aspire to? No, I don't think it is. I still think, unfortunately, that, and you've had so many great guests on and so many fantastic people, and we've all said how much of it we enjoy it and the passion and the opportunities it brings. But is it? No, it's not. And I think there's some work to be done by all of us who are involved in hospitality to make sure that people understand it's a great thing, and to give of your time, particularly when you're, at weekends or over Christmas or Easter, and to give of your time to make sure other people enjoy themselves. I think sometimes people need to be a little bit more sympathetic to that whole sort of ethos and understanding that people are doing this so that you enjoy yourself. It's quite interesting. People can be quite, a lot of people work in catering, hospitality. They'll do the job maybe they're at college or, like, and they'll be a waiter or they'll work in a kitchen, maybe even just as a KP. They'll do it and then they'll go on to their career and they it's almost like they forget what it was like, or I don't know, they want to kind of wipe the memory out. But you know what I mean? Just have a little bit more understanding for these people who are stood there and they're doing a fantastic job making great food and serving it.
I have so much respect, especially thinking, I know, especially like whenever Christmas comes, and I'm sure now in your situation, having your first Christmas with your family, like fully being home, you must have like think, well, like a year ago, or I don't know how many years ago, or like years after years, I was in a kitchen cooking. It's emotional to a degree, thinking that you put so much like blood, sweat, and tears into it, and it's difficult. I know when I left the industry, it was like it's all I ever wanted to be a chef. And for me, I'm like, okay, do I move now? Because I know, I'm going to have a family at some point. It's going to be complicated. How am I going to do it? It was a really challenging time when I left. But then I came back, as I said, with the cooking, with the YouTube channel, with this. And I felt like this is so much better, even being in touch with some people that still do it. I love it. I genuinely do.
I mean, it's and I can see how passionate it's one of those things. I used to do it, and my partner would say, why are you going at this time? And you go, well, because I need to do that. And she go, but nobody else will be there. You'll be going. But, you get to that level, and especially when you start to sort of rise through the ranks and you become like a head chef or whatever, and you're like, no, this is what I want to do. I want to make a name for myself. I want people to recognize it. So you'd find yourself going in, at sort of like 7 o'clock in the morning when everybody else starts at 10, but you want to do it because you want to fillet the fish out yourself, or you want to prepare a stock, or you want to make those things. And those little extra bits, I think, excuse me, I think those little extra bits are the bits that, like I say, people don't always seem to understand. A lot of people do. I'm not saying, but even now, I still get. I get offended by some really, really, the way people talk to people and the way people behave sometimes. And, and I can be sat in a pub drinking. If you write about food and drink, it's terrible. You kind of have to go out and eat and go and have beers in pubs. And so
you need to try.
You need to. So you find yourself in a pub and you'll just think, why are people talking to, the serving staff like that, or even simple ones. And I think this is because I used to run pubs and whatever, is they get up and they leave the glass. And that one really gets me. It's like walk past the bar and just put there. Thank you very much. It's lovely. Thank you. There's the glass. Whereas other people will go, well, they're paid to pick the glasses up off the table. It's just.
But it comes with respect. And it's not even, you don't even need to be in this industry to understand that something nice to do.
Yeah. It's just really simple, but people can be quite, they can be quite rude sometimes, and there is, I mean, it's not, we shouldn't really. There's a dark side to the industry. There's still a dark side to the industry. There's lots of hours. There's people having to work an incredible amount of hours for not vast amounts of money. Not everybody has great accommodation in it. There's still a culture. I think one of the reasons I left working in London was that it was a big culture of drug taking. I have vices. I like a beer. We've said it. I like a glass of wine. It was never my thing, but to do those hours and to get through it, there was that, and there's still. There's still a dark side to catering, and people are still, I think, used too much, and not so much on Jersey. I don't think it's, but it exists, and that's not good. So that's the other side of when you said how's it changed. I mean, the biggest change I think really is, wow, the food has changed. When I first started, if you're a vegetarian, you kind of like, oh, we've got a vegetarian dish on. What have you got? Well, we've got veg chili. or we've got veg lasagna. And the veg lasagna was the same vegetables that was in the veg chili, but it was just layered in pasta. And the veg chili was the same vegetables in the lasagna with just some beans and some chili thrown in it, Now you can have vegan, there's every sort
But
of...
at the time, I think chefs also adapted because you had a vegetarian a month.
You didn't have Ottolenghi doing his Persian and Moroccan and African style cuisine. You had a high street when I was growing up in the UK would have an Italian. It would maybe have somewhere that did some French dishes, but it was a very sort of Anglican sized version. There'd be a takeaway, a Chinese takeaway, and there'd be an Indian. And again, the Indians were kind of like, I grew up near Leicester, and so I think something at one stage, there's a really fascinating statistic that 80% of all the curry shops in the UK buy their key curry bases from 2 factories in Leicester.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, okay, each restaurant can then add things to them, but the basics come from these 2 main factories and from about the 70s, most of the Indian restaurants in the UK were run by Bangladeshi refugees. So there's a whole different thing there about Indian restaurants, but the Indian food has come along so much now. It used to just be quite, you went in and mum had a mild curry, and
we had Sam from Cafe Spice talking exactly about the same thing.
And Dad would have it with something that he wouldn't even really be able to identify what the meat was. He just wanted it to sort of like be really hot, and then he'd have exactly.
And it was also seen as something, now people go for Valentine's Day to an Indian place. They go to celebrate
and it's mainstream, but that's what I'm saying. So there's the biggest thing has been this shift to, and now, especially in the UK, if you want to go and have Lebanese cuisine for breakfast, that you can find somewhere.
If the shift to variety now.
Yeah. There's a downside to that. There's probably people who feel the pressure that they have to put too many things on their menus, and I'm says the man who has the duck recipe. Yeah, I do think you should kind of,
finding your niche.
Find your niche, or stick to your knitting a little bit. But no, you experiment by all means. But there are limits to everybody's abilities and knowledge. So yeah, it's one of those great things. I mean, I'm lucky. I like Chinese cooking. I love Italian food. But Italian and Greek food is about the simplicity. It's about the quality of the ingredients. Exactly. It's about the freshness, and it's not having. You get into French food, and French is about those incredible sauces and the richness and the depth of flavor through, putting some bones in a stock pan and roasting them, and then cooking them and extracting the flavor, and then adding wine and
sometimes low quality ingredients cooked to perfection and brought to a different level.
You can use your cheaper cuts and do it. But there's also a renaissance and there's a lot of great chefs doing it now. There's British English cooking. And when I first started, I guess nobody kind of knew what that was. So there is that kind of a little bit more pride in dishes that originated. Funnily enough, I was doing some research today, and I was looking at something, and again, it was another beer-related one. This whole podcast is going to come out and sound like I'm an alcoholic, isn't it? But it's just one of those. And I'd made a soup just before Christmas for the podcast, and it was a cheese and beer soup. And then I found almost an identical recipe, but it's gone back about 200 years, and it's called a Cheshire soup. So Cheshire's an area in England. It's a vegetable soup. You smash the vegetables, that thickens the soup, and then they crumble Cheshire cheese in it. So I was like, I haven't really invented anything there. Somebody's already done it. But it was just interesting, there's dishes. I mean, funnily enough, sort of if you really go back to English cuisine, it was actually kind of quite with it. And then when we had the war with the French kind of these big wars that we used to have with the French. one of the outcomes, if you look at it historically, is they kind of stuck the knife in English cuisine and said that all we were interested in was eating, roast beef, and that it's a little bit more complicated than that. But if you go back to about 300-400 years of English cuisine, they were the guys that had all the spices. They had pepper, they had saffron, the spices.
So surely they used it in a way or another.
They cooked with a lot of herbs. So if you didn't have access to the spices that you would do as a rich person, the people in the countryside, they'd make a stew or a soup, but they'd gather herbs and they'd flavour it with herbs. And then you had to jump and you sort of went to a very bland period of English cooking, and then we've come back. But you're talking 400 years ago, they were using more herbs than we do now, and a lot of things from hedgerows that would go into
and stuff that we
things.
probably don't recognize.
Stuff that we wouldn't even use now. Yeah, exactly. But pepper was certainly one. I mean, there's a town in England called Saffron Walden that was named after the saffron growing. So those ingredients were there. So I get interested in food history. That's another. I'm interested.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah,
I'm interested in far too much things about.
But then, I guess you got to be. If you're a writer, you need to kind of like not just know it for yourself, kind of express it in a way that other people.
Well, it's like we said. It's having that hook, and it's having that information sometimes just to drop. So. When I'm going to be doing some teaching in the next few weeks, you want to, we're going to do this. Right?
You want to make it interesting.
Yeah, of course you do. So you want to tell people. I mean, it's like the word salary comes from salt in the Roman, and Roman soldiers used to get paid in salt, or part of their wages was in salt, because it was very valuable. Right. But if you tell a kid that, they'll be like, what? Salt? And you go, yeah, because they didn't have access to it, so it was an expensive product, and it was So there's all sorts of kind of great things. Rabbits were introduced to the UK by the Romans.
Oh wow,
yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, didn't have rabbits before then. They were introduced by the Romans. So there's all sorts of, culinary history is brilliant. I just did something before Christmas about mince pies. So mince pies were originally made with meat.
To be completely honest, as a Romanian, when I came here, I thought they were with meat right away.
Yeah. Mince, well, it's confusing, isn't it? Because there's that English mince meat.
I had no idea.
So originally, it was a pie was a way of keeping something in an airtight container. So the pastry case was a sealed unit that kept the interior fresh. But to help keep it fresh, they used to mix dried fruits with the filling because they had a high sugar content, and that itself is a preservative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the point, in terms of how you preserve, with salt, with sugar, you can do with vinegar, we can do it with all sorts. But
obviously,
I didn't know that.
Meat in those days was at such a premium, and only really the very top hierarchy and the king and his immediate court were allowed to hunt and kill animals, and the local landowners. So meat was at such a premium that it would be cooked, and that's where your term réchauffer comes in French cooking, where you reheat the dish. So, I mean, the best example of that is now when you do, say, in English cooking, you cook a leg of lamb, and then the next day you mince it up and you make shepherd's pie. So a proper shepherd's pie is made with cooked meat, not fresh meat, and then you put your potatoes on the top. So that's réchauffer. It means to reheat something. So meat was réchaufféed several times. So when you see those amazing movies of like Henry VIII or the equivalent, and they're having this big bone and meat and eating it, and there's a court and there's pigs with apples stuffed in their mouths and people are all dressed in finery. What you don't realize is that meat was at such a premium that it's probably been reheated about 5 times before you've eaten it, which is why they probably all died at the age of about 30, because there were so many diseases.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful place in London called Hampton Court, which is one of King Henry VIII's palaces, and the big oven in Hampton Court is 12 people across the back. So you could stand 12 men across the back, and they used to have a spit, and you could roast 2 whole oxen on, and the spit would turn around. Huge. And obviously, if you can imagine how much wood would be needed to heat that, So it was so hot in the kitchens that they didn't wear any clothes. All the people in the kitchen just wore big leather aprons, okay? And they were allowed to have a bath once a month. So when you see this image of Henry VIII eating his wonderful piece of meat, it's been reheated 5 times. It's been cooked by 200 naked, sweaty men who haven't had a bath for a month.
Take that for your health and safety.
Yeah. Yes. So the next time I have a health and safety inspection, I'm just going to meet them in an apron. Nothing else.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, as you said, washing up, it wasn't a thing really. It was just like, even from what I heard, I mean, I'm not that knowledgeable, by the way, when it comes to this, but from what I heard, it was even for the rich. It wasn't really a thing that they would wash, themselves, like every other day. Not even. No. Just like.
I mean, they got to the stage. Yeah, they didn't understand about germs and hygiene, but there were cases where I was reading about. It's not quite the same thing, but yeah, people almost their clothes started to grow onto them. That they wore them for that long that they couldn't actually take them off. Because they kind of stuck in their, their t-shirts or vests. It's just stop now. It's just, but they didn't understand. But and again, that's a whole nother aspect of, what people did and why, and the traditions and the reasons people do things, and it's fascinating.
And it's interesting to take it right from the beginning. As you said, you discovered that there was something similar, to your recipe when you thought, I kind of invented this, breaking news. But then when you went back, you can. That's why I keep saying, and for me, it's really I don't really feel like a recipe for me is not really, especially for like the cooking channel, is not really a word that I use wholeheartedly to a degree or I don't feel like my recipe, because I'm sure someone that's done it already 1,000 times, probably even better. So it's just more of a like cooking with whatever I feel like is appropriate, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's a whole new other avenue. So as a writer, right, I'm going to make apple crumble, really traditional. I'm going to write the recipe. Now, off the top of my head, and this is, I would normally phone my mum because she has a thing with the recipe written down because I can't remember the ratio of crumble. It's 8 ounces. I don't do it in grams. Sorry, I'm old fashioned. It's 8 ounces of flour. It's 4 ounces of sugar and 2 ounces of fat. I think that's right. There'll be people moaning if I don't get it right. But, that's a basic crumble. You can throw some oats in there. You can throw some cinnamon there. If I write a recipe, I haven't invented that. So who has the copyright on a recipe? Or, if you look on the web and somebody will say, well, this is my crumble recipe. Well, it's not really, because it's a, it's a generic recipe. So I think there's very, very few, there's dishes that chefs do and they do this and this and this and this. But recipe writing is a bit kind of like, because it's out there, and
you add your touch, I guess. You add your touch, but that doesn't mean that you invented the structure of that.
But then you get to the other side of it, and then I guess, and this is, I used to work with 2 chefs, both used to run kitchens over here. One was Hungarian and one was Austrian. So I kind of guess where you can think where I'm going with this one. The goulash wars. And I used to egg them on, and we had the great goulash wars. So I would go,
It's good that you didn't get in a Romanian because we kind of like.
That's why I kind of thought I'd bring this one up. So I used to say, you can't make goulash. Only the Hungarians, they tell me, only Hungarians can make goulash. This is ridiculous, Christian. I will show you. And he'd show me how to do it. And then I'd find the other one. I go, no, you can't do it. He'd show me. And fundamentally, the recipes were the same. But then I learned as you're going on, the base was the same, but there are hundreds of different ways. And like you say, there's probably Romanian, but there are thick goulashes. There are goulashes that are more like a soup. The basics there, it's the bitter onions where you almost burn the onions, the paprika. But then, because I started this, then one of them went on holiday and bought me a book, and then the other one. So then the goulash wars just escalated. But this is going back to who owns recipes and do. It's a bit like bolognese in Italy. You know, no two places make the same bolognese. So different villages or towns or areas have different goulashes. So one would be garnished with a bread and milk dumpling. One would be garnished with a fried egg. One would be garnished with this. And then they all had different names and combinations. And so, yeah, you've got one end of the scale where you cannot say, well, that's a crumble, it's generic, I can't put my name on it. But then you've got the other one where you can go down to, well, this is my family's recipe for this, and we've made it for 5 generations because that's how grandma did it and that's how her mom showed her, and it's this, you know. It's like I say, bolognese. I've got recipes for bolognese that have got chicken livers in it, milk's quite a popular one, actually.
Oh, wow.
You always put, you should put a couple of a splash of milk in a bolognese. It takes the edge off it.
I never make it the same. I'm one of the guys that I honestly say it, you know, because that's the part that I love about cooking. And for me, I'm quite easy for anyone to judge what I do and I take it, you know, no problem. Because I feel that's how I felt on that day.
Yeah.
If I'm like today I add, I don't know, half teaspoon of black pepper, and tomorrow I don't, I'm okay with it because that's how I feel.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, it's not even a recipe. It's almost like how you feel on the day.
Yeah.
And if you feel like chili works, well, chili works.
Yeah.
Because that's what you like. So it's a bit of that. And as you said about the goulash war, you get to a point where, okay, they both follow the same recipe, but then the ingredients, one is from Hungary, one is from... So there'll still be a differentiation in between.
But that's the great leveler, and that's why we're here, and that's the great thing about food is, it's like you say, your bolognese has a teaspoon of pepper in, mine has a splash of milk in. Some people's have chicken livers in, some is made with pork and beef, some's just made with beef, some made with veal and beef. Does it have garlic in? You know, if you talk to Italians and then you talk about garlic in Bolognese, it's a whole new can of worms. You know, you can be there for
same like with the carbonara.
Yeah,
oh my God.
No, I once made the mistake of making carbonara with cream and no.
I've done one. I knew I'm going to piss off quite a few people. I've done the 2 versions, you know, like I've done the classic. I mean, I didn't use guanciale, which most people say that's how you should do it. I use pancetta, but I did it one with egg yolks only, and one that I use cream in it too. And you know what? I kind of like the one with cream. I'm gonna say it. You know, it's just the way it is. It just feels, it's not as heavy in a way as well. I use single cream as well, and it makes it cuts a bit of that heaviness from like the egg yolks.
Yeah. Well, again, you're going back, and that's what we're saying about owning food. It's that, you know, you're owning something, and you go to, you know, there are purists, and there will always be people, and that is that recipe, and that is how it should be, and it should never change. And you go, well, yes, but I don't like it, or it doesn't sell, or people don't buy it, or people don't want it. Like you've said, taste change. You know, things are different.
And it's
now,
also like, know your people, know the people you serve it for, right?
Yeah.
That's why, just I guess a good example, chicken tikka masala.
Yeah.
It was adapted to the British taste.
Yeah.
So your whole new dish was invented,
Yeah.
which you can't, as far as I'm aware, you can't find it in India.
They actually bring people over now. Do you know this? So there's a dispute whether it's either in Glasgow or Birmingham where it was made, but most people accept that it was made with a tin of Campbell's condensed tomato soup, which gave it the tomatoey flavour. But they actually now bring people over, and I think it's the Mumbai Hilton, and they were shipping people over to Birmingham to learn how to make it, to then take them back to Mumbai so that they can cook it in the Mumbai Hilton, so that people can have, because obviously people are international, when they go, they want chicken tikka masala.
Wow. That's something else.
That is just frightening, though, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, you know, you're actually saying to a guy who's, you know, we're going to take you show you how to make a curry. I'm sorry. Yeah,
especially if you get one that's quite traditional in his beliefs and recipes, you know, like for generations to generation, you know how people are. Some people are, and then you're like, I'm going to send you to learn the proper way.
Well, we talked about you said about you know, interviewing people about curries. We talked about curries earlier, and the English thing about hot curries. There's a famous guy called Kit Chapman. He runs a thing called the Curry Club, and they did a journey once through India, from northern India to southern India, and they went on a train and they did every single curry. They were there for about 3 weeks. They did the traditional curries in the north, and then as they got near to the coast, they had the seafood curries, they had the vegetarian curries. They were curried out. They had 3 weeks of curries. They flew back into England, and legend has it that when they got to Heathrow, and I used to work near Heathrow, they went to a curry Indian restaurant in Ivor in Buckinghamshire, because none of them had had a curry hot enough in India, and they all ordered the same curry in this little and he, you know, the guy was there with these 30 guys sat around a table. He said, "Where have you just been? We've all been to India for 3 weeks."
You know, you're quite, and you're right with this, because I had Manvinder from Bollywood Bites, the head chef from there, and he said that India is a big place. I mean, for people to understand, you know, like every big country will have like variations. It happens all the time. Same like with the language, you go from north to south, they'll be almost like talking a different language. So same with food. So he was saying that from the region he comes from, you know, the food is actually not spicy. It's actually very mild for taste. So he says that it shouldn't be spicy. The traditional Indian cuisine is actually not that spicy. It's not hot. Sorry, it's not hot.
I'm going to say you have to qualify it. Spice and hot is difficult, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not hot in terms of like it doesn't burn your throat. You know, like some people expect it. That's what he was saying, and I'm like, I was kind of expecting, because I've not been to India, to be even stronger in. Not just in spice, but also in terms of hotness.
Yeah, no.
And apparently not.
No. And they do adjust it for English taste. Yeah. And ramp it up. And you're just like, that's just...
Yeah. And I guess that's why we also see a lot of like cream. I might be wrong. I doubt that they use that much cream that some of the restaurants here use. Just a guess.
Yeah. No, it's... it's a completely. If you look at proper Indian cooking, it's a very. I mean, I know the guys again at Bollywood, but it's another one of those great things, and it's fantastic when they use so they call it a gravy, but they use a base, and it's getting the flavour into the base where you roast the spices in the pan, and you've got your ginger in there, and you maybe put some green peppers and some tomatoes, and then that gets all blitzed down, and that forms that key kind of flavour base, and then you alter the profiles by putting it in. But I mean, butter chicken, which when you have a butter chicken, and it appears to be quite creamy. It's not, you know, you can use almonds, and there's various different ingredients, but no, they don't use a lot of, I guess, and this is purely speculative, I guess until recently you wouldn't use a lot of cream in the cookery, because they wouldn't have had a way of keeping it safe.
True.
You know, with the you know, it's only in the last sort of maybe 20 years that rural India's got to the point where they would have a way of, so if you did have milk, it probably got used pretty quickly.
I'm not even saying about Bollywood Bites. I'm talking in general. I guess some of the restaurants adapted. It was like, they want the sauce like quite creamy, and you know.
Yeah, so they
a bit of.
But it's that hybrid. But I would have to look it up, but I will do now, because it's one of those things
where it's
going to burn a hole in my. But I'm just thinking, you know, I can understand them making it into paneer and into cheeses, but you know, you're talking India, hot country. You're not going to want if you've got a cow, you're not going to want to have loads of milk just sat there waiting for you to make a. Yeah.
I mean, even here, I remember working in a restaurant. Cream. Most of restaurants, you can kind of tell when. To a degree, you can kind of tell when they use Jersey dairy cream or proper cream, or they use the vegetable base crap. You know, that's a totally different story. So when I was still in the restaurants, you know, I remember ordering the 5-liter stuff, you know, from Jersey dairy, and even with that, even in Jersey, it was kind of challenging. It was cream, you know, we need to find space for it. So yeah, I get the point, you know, in terms of the challenge with storing it. Yeah, and I think you're right with that, because even here, where it's not that hot comparing to, or it's not that challenging.
And obviously, a lot of it would get converted into ghee as well, which they use. So and
they
obviously
use a lot of ghee,
because you're getting rid of the buttermilk, and then it's all of the butter fat that's going to keep better. So I mean, again, that's another reason you look at catering. You look at, so when you're saying your Romanian background, if you look at Northern European backgrounds, they tend to fry things in animal fats. So, you've got that British tradition, and you probably still see it here, where people like triple cooked chips, and then you might hear them saying, is it fried in beef fat, which is the ultimate. But it has a very high smoking point, so it gets a very crisp chip, but it was the fats that they had available. Whereas southern sort of Europe tends to rely on olive oil from Spain, from Italy, because again, that's what they had available. So, a lot of cooking until recently, it was about perhaps more seasonality and the ingredients that you have. I mean, there is a bit of a kickback now, and I have to admit, I'm one of those people now. If you go into a restaurant and they go, "Oh, we've got a piece of fish on it with asparagus," and I go, "Well, it's not asparagus season. Sorry, I don't really."
It doesn't really taste right. It's not.
It's about it looks like it. Yeah, exactly.
It works. It works in terms of combination, but it's not the right taste for it because it's not in season.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, and we do have a few growers over here. I mean, the thing is with asparagus, it's 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's very short.
And you kind of like, whoa, there's a glut of it, and you're kind of like, right, make soup, salads, everything asparagus. What are we going to do for a starter? We're going to have asparagus. What's the main course? We'll do a crab tart with fresh asparagus. What's the dessert? Well, can we do it with asparagus? So it is, but again, that's one of those things. But strawberries and what's the demon fruit that everybody used to put on for a while? With the Chinese gooseberry, and you open it up and they used to dip them in there you go. I can't remember
that exactly now.
Chinese gooseberries, but I can't remember the other name. But everybody for at one stage, every dessert had one of those to put on the top, and you just like, nobody eats them.
Yeah,
we just used to put them on.
I guess it was a period, where, well, it probably still is, where everything has flowers, whether it works or doesn't. Just chuck some flowers, it's gonna look better, or
So and where we live, we should really take notice of seasonality so much, because we live on this almost Mediterranean island. There's another wonderful lady I know, and she's into doing regeneration and farming, and she was telling me there's now the suppliers on this island can supply over 200 different grown products. That's quite a lot. Different, might be the same one, but it might be different varieties of tomato or whatever. But there's about 200 products that we can buy on the island, and you just think, crikey, we should be able to kind of. I know in the depths of winter it's difficult, but even in the depths of winter, you've got leeks, you've got cauliflower, so you can do cauliflower couscous, you can do cauliflower.
We still have our potatoes.
Yeah, you've got potatoes, and we live on this fantastic, almost Mediterranean climate, where we've got incredible seafood, we've got salads, fruits, vegetables. We should have the most amazing diet and food available, and sometimes we don't. We're still bringing things in, and restaurants don't. But that goes back to our conversation that we really started. We've come right around to it again. Is if people want a pie and a lasagna, you have to give people a pie and lasagna.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, restaurants, hotels, all the hospitality establishments are businesses. They need to be profitable. Otherwise, you can't run. It's just the way it is, right? Yeah. So you got to adapt.
Yeah. You have to give
bums on seats.
Yeah, you have to give the people what they want.
Yeah. Which I guess it comes from it will come a lot from the consumer to change certain areas. Also from chefs, like I was talking to Tom, because you mentioned Tom, he likes to add, and I feel like many people do that, and I'm sure like many chefs do that, when they have, try with special, see if they, they can maybe incentivize them, try to get them on a certain, on a certain ingredient or on a certain style of cooking, you know, see if they bite, you know, and maybe continue with it, because chefs get bored as well. Like, you don't want to cook turkey all the time, right?
No. I don't want to cook turkey ever again. But yeah. You're right. It's there is that. It's not your job to educate in a commercial restaurant, but it's nice if you've got that freedom and the specials board and the ability to do that. And it's great if you've got customers who are willing to try, you know, and that's always good. That's always good.
Do you have what other restaurants would you like to see on the island? That's one of the questions I also ask people.
So, we've kind of done it, haven't we? We've said Chinese. We want
a China Red in Jersey.
There are Chinese restaurants on the island. There's just not one that I really, really like. We're very kind of lucky. We've got a couple now of Italians. We've got a Spanish restaurant. We're very, very lucky. You know, it's
a bit of everything.
If we picked Jersey up and slapped it on the bottom of the mainland, and it was a town with 100,000 people, you would not have the diversity of restaurants and talent in catering that you have. Now, some of that is down to tourism, some of that is down to finance, some of that is down to just we're very lucky in the heritage and the ingredients. So there's a combination, but we need to sort of kind of keep that going. I think when I first moved over here, we had 3 Michelin-starred restaurants.
Yeah,
and we had
about 3.
We had the 3rd highest number of AA rosettes after London and Edinburgh. Now, I know it's changed a little bit, and people's tastes have kind of dropped down maybe so much from the formal dining. But you've got some incredible chefs on the island. Not just in restaurants, you know, you've got the guys who do private parties,
but that, again, that's kind of due to finance, right? Because you got to afford to be able to afford. So that kind of shifted some of these good chefs into that niche.
Yeah, the guys at Panda Catering. Oh, you know, there's some amazing. We're very lucky that we have 2 breweries. We're very lucky that we have about 7 independent wine merchants, which, you know, is just unheard of.
Huge variety.
And the huge variety of what we get. So we're very lucky again with all that produce. Chinese, we do okay. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of like innovative little, but I'm, you know, would I don't know, actually a really nice Turkish restaurant, a proper Turkish restaurant.
I'm talking like charcoal and stuff like that.
Yeah, doing it all. Yeah, that would be good.
There is one in Liverpool. I remember I went to one of those. Absolutely amazing. I can't remember exactly the name now, but I have it saved on because I found it on TripAdvisor. I was blown. The queue at the entrance was like literally almost endless.
I guess because of property prices. You know, there is that restriction, and we are lucky. We've got so many, you know, and places turn over and guys are trying. I do kind of miss that when I do go to London, there's those, or Liverpool or Manchester, there's that vibe of the little kind of, you know, they have the Formica tables. Not a lot of money is spent on the joint, but the people who do it with a certain amount of passion. When I used to live in London, there used to be a little Thai restaurant, and I can remember being quite drunk one night and going there with my friend, and it was the first time we ever went there, and we got really confused because we couldn't understand why everybody was so well dressed, because it was kind of about the size of your room here, with just little Formica top tables. There was no tablecloths, paper napkins. There were 2 Thai people behind, and it was a father and daughter, and she took the orders because he couldn't understand, and then I don't know who was in the kitchen. And it was that kind of place, you know, where they bring the food out when it's cooked. So you don't get it all together. You get one dish that's ready now. The next dish comes when it's ready. But everybody else was in bow ties and like white dinner jackets.
Wow, what a contrast!
Yeah, and we were like, why? It looked like something out of, you know, The Godfather, because they were all extremely well dressed. And we eventually worked it out through the sort of slightly alcoholic fudge that it was right in the middle of like where all of the big theatres are, where people do the musicals. And these were all the guys from the orchestra pit. They'd all finished work And they were all coming out, all in their, because they've all been
Yeah,
playing,
yeah.
all in their bow ties and jackets. And they were coming out and having a tie. And this was the place where they all used to go. But it was just the most confusing. But, so that's the kind of, I don't want to say seedy, because seedy is the wrong, but, those mum and pop places where it's all about.
More like family
Yeah,
run.
it's all about the food and it's not about the fact that there's a guy there when you walk in and he takes your coat.
That's kind of stuff you see in Italy, in like more remote places.
But
and
you get those,
villages
and you get those amazing Camden in London. There's the street food in Camden when you go out to Camden Market. There's absolutely amazing. Again, you can kind of get anything that you want, and any combination. So I just miss, I guess, there's that little sort of street mum and pop. And I understand why, because it's too expensive. I always thought, I think is it not JD Sports. It used to be BH. I always think if there was a big space, if I won lots of money, what I'd like to do is get one of the sort of buildings that's empty and actually do like a place where people could do pop-ups and do little restaurants and do little, and have
almost like cubicles.
Yeah, like a food hall, but you'd have 5 or 6, and you could just say, I could say to you, well, okay, Romanian, come and do it for a week, come and do or whatever, and I think there are so many opportunities over here. So it's that kind of food that I miss, I think. So not a specific type of restaurant, but that kind of
experience,
street food experience where you can get one thing and then go get another thing, and then you can go get a donut or a whatever. Yeah.
But in terms of beverages, because you kind of touch on that we have we have quite a bit of variety here. I see these like micro brewery, there's this guy that I'm going to get on the podcast eventually that makes vodka and gin or whatever from milk. I'm like, wow. Like, there's things I didn't know. I mean, I'm sure for you it's not breaking news, but for me,
there's so many, there's so many producers of gin and vodkas on the island now.
How do you see that? How do you see that evolving? Because that seems to be quite popular. Becoming quite popular for the past years.
Again, it's like us going back to the food conversation. There's kind of a big word. It's a great word. Dichotomy. There's a split. There's always going to be the chains and the people, and they want that, and they want something that's identifiable at a price they can afford, and they'll have it. And then there's the innovators, and there's we've got the flute vodka, we've got the Jersey Royal vodka, we've got the vodka made from milk, we've got the vodka with the seaweed the gin with the seaweed that's collected off the beaches.
That one is doing really well. It's already in a lot of big establishments. We've got
Lanique, which is the one with the roses, and the pink one that's around the world. I mean, you see that now in so many like really high-end establishments around the world. And we've got some really great sort of sales guys. There's the Tidal Rum there now on cruise ships, and they're doing demonstrations. Because I always see these guys, and I think I'm going to start writing a lot more about these guys. And by the time I get in contact with them, they're like, we're sorry, we're on a cruise ship, Christian. We're a little bit too busy for you now. But so there'll always be that, and it's great, and it's absolutely fantastic that people can do it. Again, for the population that we've got, we're lucky. We've got Liberation Brewery. And then we've got the Stinky Bay Brewing Company. So we've got 2 great breweries.
Randall's is not doing anything anymore.
Randall's don't brew beer, no, but they're doing.
Yeah, they distribute.
They're doing some really exciting. So I was reading they're going to do a darts themed bar.
I heard something.
But they're also going to do another cup on. I'm trying to remember what they've said, but they're really looking at what they offer and again different offerings, which is all well and good, which helps, I think that's the other thing, bringing people onto the island. People want experiences. Last time I went to Bristol, we went axe throwing, great
Yeah.
way to start an evening and level out friendships and aggression. You know, we were throwing axes for 2 hours. Don't want to drink too much beer while you're doing it, but yeah, it's so, you know, there's all these things that you can do now, and I guess Jersey, you know, you can't afford to rest on your laurels, and I guess Jersey can be a little bit staid. It's interesting. I'm sure you follow, like I do, lots of the Facebook, you know, Jersey this, Jersey that, and you always get people going, "What can I do?" You
There are
know,
quite a few
bring
people
people.
like
What
that.
can I do when I come over and do this? And you go, "Well, you've got the war tunnels, you've got this, you've got this, you've got." But actually, if the weather's bad, and I don't, I think the war tunnels are brilliant. I think there are a lot of good things, but you know, we have to be realistic. You can have more than one day bad weather in a row, and then all of a sudden you're a bit limited. You know,
You're right.
so I think, you know, the more different things that we can have, you know, we've got the 70s bar opening, we've got speakeasies, we've got, I mean, it's a really innovative, great place. I think we need a few more of those little mum and pop restaurants that we said. Drinks wise, I think we're there. I think we're doing
We've got
really.
a Marley, the wine is amazing.
Yeah, we've
huh?
got, we're doing so well. Cider.
Cider,
The
you're right.
Roberine cider. Oh, that's wicked stuff. That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I mean, again, for a size of the island, what we're doing, and the producers that we've got, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. What other plans are for the island chefs in the coming months, years, whatever, you know, short, medium, long?
So the big focus, the big focus is going to be suppliers. So we talked about this in niche, didn't we? So, and I'm gonna not with all the gear that you've got, but I am gonna start going out. I've invested in some kit, so I'm gonna go to like the brewery, and I'm gonna go and do so I'll do a big feature on the brewery, and then so we've got. I'm lining up the Jersey Tea Company. We'll talk to one of the guys about the distilleries and one of the.
It's amazing.
So not quite in the area that you are, but just doing a little bit, talking to the people about.
It doesn't need to be. I mean,
yeah,
if you got the right message.
Yeah, talking to the people about their products and what they do, who they are. So there's a little bit of stuff like that to focus the niche down a bit. As a personal brand, I am. So we mentioned about the British Guild of Food Writers. They have a competition every year for like cookbooks and different things. I'm one of the judging panel for their drinks book. So I've got a pile of about 20 different books and articles winging its way through the post that I've got to sit and read through and review to judge that. And then we all go to the awards ceremony in the Royal Institution in London in October. And like I said, that's your Nigella Lawson's and the great and the good of the catering world. So that'll be a great shindig. I'm doing some tasting for the Great Taste Awards. So I don't know if you ever see those, you know, if you like buy nice biscuits and olives and things like that, they have a little black circle with gold stars on.
Yes.
It's called the Great Taste Awards. So
yeah, you have 1, 2, and 3 stars, I think.
That's right. So I'm doing some judging for the Great Taste Awards
Wow.
in the UK. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things. Going back to the conversation we had about the hard work and the perseverance, it's paying off. And obviously, because I've got this wonderful job with caring cooks in school term, it gives me a little bit more time. So yeah, more writing, and again, its focus was a bit. Before Christmas, I had to admit, we had a few different issues with kids being poorly in bits and pieces. Your focus goes off. It is important to do it. And if you lose that edge, you're kind of getting back into it. But since Christmas, 2 nights a week, I sit down, and it's amazing how long it takes. You know, we've touched on this earlier while we're talking, but actually to do 800 words or a recipe and to get it concise and to get it clear and explain it, it's hard work. It is, you know, it's not something you just kind of sit there at the keyboard and, I've got to write a recipe.
But do you think that your niche will be more towards drinks? Because you do like this part and beers, and it's going to be an interesting one if you go that route. Do you feel like that's heading that way?
It seems to be heading that way. I can see my partner will be when she. Oh no, it does seem to be heading that way. It's just, I guess it's the little bit of me that's going to be slightly immodest. You know, the guys say, you know, why do you get? Oh, well, you actually seem to be able to do it, and it's that communication bit. And it's that skill to be able to put across. There's a big movement in especially wine, but beer as well. It can be very snobbish, and a bit like the rest of the world. You know, it can be quite. It can be quite middle-aged, white, male-dominated. Oh dear. There's a kind of a bit of a problem there, isn't it? But I guess because I've got that food background. You know, there's that link where I can kind of use the knowledge about food. So we talked about malt earlier and saying we were going to do a malt ice cream float. So when I'm talking to the guys who do the podcast, they quite like it because they're talking about it from a beer perspective. Well, we're going to use this and we toast these grains and it has this flavor. Whereas I can say, well, actually, it's just like toast, or it's like malted bread, or it's like Ovaltine. If somebody says to you, what's malty, Ovaltine, or those square biscuits with the frilly edges, that's what malt tasted of, because they're a malted milk biscuit. Now, if you say that to somebody, well, probably English particularly, but if you explain that to them, Ovaltine, they'll know what that is, and they'll know that taste from their childhood, as opposed to, and when you get these people, it's floral, and you're getting newly mown grass, then you know what it tastes of. But if you just say to it, it tastes like you've, I don't know, got a big handful of herbs and just rubbed it.
Yeah.
You get it's being able to communicate in a way that's consumer friendly. And there is a whole movement about saying, actually, and I noticed this when I was doing my wine courses, is everybody tastes things differently.
True.
So what you taste and I taste is we can be tasting the same thing, but how we taste it is completely different. So somebody using a language is, you've got to connect with that. Now you can give you an example of, say, a Chardonnay wine, an oaked Chardonnay wine from the New World. It's buttery. What do I mean by buttery? It's kind of got that vanilla-y, slightly smoky, and I'm using all those winey words, but you might pick up on it, but you might not. But if I'm using some of those descriptive words, it's for you to then put that taste and those smells to what that wine is. It doesn't really matter what the words are. It's what you perceive it to be. And it's another, I guess I'm kind of trying, without sounding too much of a bore, it's another intellectual puzzle, and it's another thing that I'm interested in, is how do you describe that? So I guess, like I said, because of the food background, I probably find it quite easy to then describe relative terms for drinks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because you come also with a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Which I guess it also helps. I feel like the way it also helps is because if, let's say, all you know it's wine, and you grow up with wine and you're good at wine, but there are people that don't really understand it. You almost need to kind of like scrap that jargon, to come with terms that people understand and they can associate, very easily.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to say biscuit, the kind of biscuit, they'll be like, I know what you're talking about.
There's almost, I used to run a pub, and I wish I'd done it. And again, if I had the money and I was going to run a restaurant to like open your dream restaurant.
Yeah.
One of the things I do is I think about drinks menus is I would not do it by wine and beer. I'd do it by taste. So you would say, right, fruity. And there are fruity beers and there are fruity wines. And you could just
easy to understand.
And you could just have a list. And you can say buttery or vanilla-y. And again, there are different, and you could do it, or you could do sharp, or you could just finding those, or sweet, or
things that people can identify very easily.
But it's bitter, So there's a drink called bitter, but the reason it is it's bitter. But there are wines that are bitter, not unpleasantly bitter, but they have that characteristic in the drink. Chocolate is bitter. Dark chocolate is bitter. So if you go, well, actually, yeah, no, I see what you mean now. It is, isn't it? Yeah. Well, now you've got it. It's not disagreeable. Bitter doesn't have to mean something is disagreeable. Coffee, chocolate, certain types of beer and certain types of wine all have those flavor characteristics. So you could almost do a wine or drinks menu by flavors.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, it comes to like knowing I always say knowing your audience, but knowing your customer. If let's say you're going to do, it's explaining it for everyone's kind of like mind, because not everybody, if you're going to explain it that way, probably to an expert, they'll be like, this is kind of weird. But most people and customers that probably you get through your door will be like regular Joe on the street, that he will understand bitter by the way you explain it.
You're right. It's jargon. It's not professionals. It's clear, but it's also, you don't want to be patronizing. Again, the other end of the scale is, like I say, you've got people when they start babbling and it smells of naked babies' bottoms and whatever. It's one of my favorite. I love sherry. Now, sherry's very underrated. Sherry's a great wine because you get more quality for your money than you do with most other wines, because it's still not incredibly popular. It's still not seen to be something that's fashionable people drink, but it's great. And there's so many different varieties, and you can get some incredibly good wines for good prices. Now, there's a particular type of sherry called Pedro Jimenez, which is named after the grape that it's made from. And a Pedro Jimenez grape is dried like a sultana or a raisin in the sunshine to increase the sugar that makes this very sweet. I would like to describe this wine as being it's raisins squeezed between angels' thighs. It's the most wonderful day. I've just done exactly what I've said you shouldn't do, flowery language. It's
I'll give you a try now.
If you like it, if you like sweet things.
I'm not a fan, but I'll give you a try.
Now, pour some over some ice cream and it's like a grown-up milkshake. But it's rich, it's warming, it's dark, it's treacly, it's sweet. Oh, it's wonderful. But the way sherry's made is they have a selection of barrels and they pour the new wine into the top barrel. They take a bit out of that and they put it in the next barrels. So you can buy it on the island. You can buy Pedro Jimenez sherry that the original wine that started is over 120 years old.
Wow.
Now, if you were buying a bottle of...
It would cost a fortune.
Yeah. But, okay, it's not... And again, I don't want to go in because it's a snobby wine. It's not cheap, but penny for penny, it's nowhere near the sort of, £600-700 a bottle that you would be paying.
Wow, I didn't know that. I definitely didn't know that.
Sherry is, and that's what I'm saying. But you can get incredibly dry sherry, you can get nutty sherry, you can chill it, you can serve it on ice. It's very versatile and it's incredible. I'm so passionate about sherry. It's just, but when I grew up, then again, it goes back to taste. When I grew up, it was something in England that your grandma gave, when somebody came around and they had little glasses, and it'd be like, would you like a glass of sherry? And they'd pour a little. When you watch detective movies that are set in England in a certain era, that's what they're always having, a little glass of sherry, Vicar, and they do it like that. Yeah, but it isn't. It's a fantastically, but there are hundreds of different wines. So yeah, I think I'm going wine and beer drink. Yeah, wine. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
We'll see.
Passionate
about too many things to say definitely one direction.
That's the problem. There's only one of me, and there's not enough time.
This is it. But for people that want to know more about you, get in touch with you, maybe where did they find you? Whether on social media, website, and everything else. Give us some details.
So the easiest way is just to go www.anislandchef.com. If you navigate around there are links. An Island Chef on Instagram. I have got the others, but it's mainly Instagram and the website. The website's quite easy to navigate. The wine writing, there is another one, but you can find a link on the Island Chef website. So if you just remember An Island Chef and either look it up as blog or Instagram, you can find me. And you'll know because there's a ridiculously silly picture of me with a lobster stood in the sea.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's great.
Bruh, somebody once pointed out, and you get these people and you're like, oh, right. So we did this. It wasn't professional. It was just me and a lad, and he did it on his camera. He got a fairly decent camera on his phone. And I went out and stood in the sea, and I've got this lobster in a pan. And then somebody noticed. They went, well, why would you ever cook lobster in the sea?
I noticed that was cooked, but then you don't want to hold the live
and I'm
lobster.
Like, I'm stood. Like 6 meters out.
Yeah, you don't want to be with the lobster.
Like, come on, guys, give me a bit of credit.
Plus, the pot was there, so you could say that it was ready cooked. You just took it out.
Yeah, but then they'd have gone, well, how would you be cooking a lobster out in the middle of the? Anyway, it's great. So if you look, there is a nice logo which has got a little map of Jersey, if you notice. There's a logo, but there's a picture of me. So an Island Chef. And then if you look, it'll either be Instagram or I've got all the LinkedIn.
Oh, you're on LinkedIn as well. You're all over the place.
I've got all this. I did some of the great things that Jersey've done. I've done the mentoring with Jersey Digital. So you've got to have a brand, Christian. So that's my brand. But I do it. But Instagram tends to be the one that I tend to post to, and then active. It posts to it more active on there, and then the website. There is the Cascaway, which is all the beer writing, but the links are on there from the Island Chef.
What an amazing conversation! I genuinely really enjoyed this, and I found out quite a few things that I never had idea they ever existed.
Oh, thank you.
So I hope that you'll find time, later in the year, we'll find more time to come back and talk maybe specifically on things that probably will blow people's minds, in terms of like history of food or drinks.
Absolutely, we can do something.
That'd be so good because you have the knowledge.
Do you know what we should do, actually? Mm-hmm. We should do, we'll do a drinks, I don't think anybody wants to sit and watch the pair of us drink loads, but maybe we'll bring something in and we can do like a drinks tasting.
That would be great.
Yeah,
that would be great.
We'll do a drinks tasting and then I can do a bit more. We'll do it. I'll save it. The history of gin. Do you know that in Victorian times, gin was a penny a pint?
Wow.
I was born in the wrong era. Oysters and gin, both penny a pint. So you would go and you would buy a pint of gin and a pint of oysters. Definitely born in the wrong era. It did have the side effects that it would make your hair fall out and it wasn't brilliantly made, but nevertheless, it was a pint.
For that price. Absolutely. So honestly, keep them for the next one.
Will do.
We need to put something together because this was so insightful. And I like that we got into to a different route, that we usually talk on this channel, just like the day-to-day hospitality. It was something different with a twist, something that you want to kind of implement in schools and, for the new generation, which is amazing. So absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. And
It's
we'll
an
see you in the
absolute
next one.
Thank you.